A group of friends visit their old family home in Texas amid a social and economic downturn. They stumble into a night of hell as they make acquaintance with the Sawyer family and the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface. Tobe Hooper's retina-scorching blast of terror was hugely influential to the horror genre as it horrified moviegoers and gave us one of the most unique and iconic villains of all time. My name is Luke, and in the camper van with me today are Westy.
You can have dinner with us. You like head cheese? My brother makes it real good. You like it.
And Matt.
Look what your brother did to the door!
In a behind-the-scenes tale almost as terrifying as the film itself, who will survive and what will be left of us as we go deep into the heart of the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Hello and welcome to All the Right Movies, a barbecue roasting podcast on classic and hit films. Today we're talking about the bona fide horror classic, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre.
Yeah.
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 Before we do, just a note to say that we've got some excellent content building on Patreon. We spoke about it before, I'm sure you've heard us talking about it.
Once or twice.
Yeah.
There are 3 additional podcasts per month on there, so if you want a weekly All the Right Movies fix, then that's the place to go.
Sure is.
Yep.
You also get access to the podcast archive as only the most recent 20 episodes are on general release. So that's over 30 episodes and counting, exclusive only to our patrons. Visit www.patreon.com/alltherightmovies for more information and to sign up.
Defo.
Yep. You won't be disappointed.
Sound a bit more effervescent about it there, Matt. You won't be disappointed.
Maybe.
Right, okay, let's tackle this, Matt. Texas Chain Saw Massacre, why?
So, first time I saw this, I don't think there'd been a film I'd been like anticipating as much as this, because obviously it was so hard to get hold of, and I just heard about it for so long, and that poster and the tagline on the poster, I was like, this is going to be insane, it's going to be amazing, and I was underwhelmed on first viewing.
Wow.
Because it wasn't the film I was expecting. At the end I was like, well, that didn't pan out how I thought it was going to pan out.
Okay.
But it was still kind of hanging around in my brain, and then eventually, I think to say a film isn't what you were expecting to be, I don't think that's really a valid criticism, because that's on you. So the second time I went to watch, because I didn't think it was terrible, I just thought, I've missed something. Second time I saw it, knowing what it was going to be, that's when it just all clicked for me.
Okay.
And it just stands alone in the horror genre. There's been loads of films that have come after it that have tried to copy it, but they don't have anything like the effect that this one does. Yes, it's rough around the edges, but that's what gives it its power, and I'd much rather be talking about a film that does have such a unique sensibility than something, you know, generic like Scream or The Conjuring. So, yeah, it's a great one.
Okay. Slammed, Scream and The Conjuring.
It's alright, you know.
Westy?
Texas Chain Saw Massacre. What,
your arch nemesis.
It's not though. Well, it was for so many years, but now it's not. I used to go over my cousin's house when I was like 8 years old, and he used to get Fangoria magazine.
All right.
Remember? And you had like posters. Yeah, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre poster. And just them words, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, is probably the best collection of words for any film ever. And it promises so much with the title that you have to see it. It's just immediately engaging. And when I did see it, I think I was too young to watch it. Yes. Got it on a pirate VHS copy, which made it even worse because it's rough anyway. And I love the 4K restoration, just looks unbelievable now. But back then, that just made it 100 times worse because the volume was louder than it should have been and the picture was the quality it shouldn't have been. So everything was just mismatched in the perfect way. And I felt disgusted by it. I felt physically ill for about 7 to 8 years after I'd seen it for the first
Jesus
time.
Christ.
Just remembering back certain bits. This is one of them films that, even if you watch that like 10 minutes, that 10 minutes stays with you forever. It just burns itself into your brain. It burns itself into your whole feeling and your whole psyche, and just questions like, what do you believe is right and wrong, and your morals and everything about it. Just makes you so uncomfortable to watch. And I love it now for that reason. I love delving into all of the facts and all of the backstories and all of the making ofs, because there's so much to talk about with this film. It's so important.
You're in for a rough ride because there's so much to talk about here.
But it is great. I mean, the everything that came before it, and then this was just a punch in the face. You had Psycho, then Night of the Living Dead, then Rosemary's Baby, then Last House on the Left, then The Exorcist, and then this just goes, bang. This is it. We're stripping everything away. The gloss that was building, even The Exorcist has that little bit of a shield between you and what's going on. This just strips that curtain away, and it just absolutely assaults you, and it's wonderful. Love it.
Yes. I must have had a similar experience. It sounds the same as yours, Matt, that it was in an elite group of films that I wanted to watch when I was a teenager, but I couldn't because they were banned in the UK. So that was things like A Clockwork Orange, The Exorcist.
Yeah.
This was firmly in that group. And it finally got released over here in 1999. And me and my friends were like crazy excited about it. Mm-hmm. And it was playing at a cinema about 20 miles from us, and none of us drove. So I have to admit this, we inveigled somebody who we knew that drove to take us, and we tried to give it the hard sell about how awesome it was going to be, and it almost didn't pay off. And
in a camper van.
At the last minute, he folded, and we went. Unlike you, Matt, I was blown away by it. I wasn't prepared for this at all. And the guy that we went with, he didn't like it. He didn't like it at all.
No, charge you twice as much for petrol money.
Made you walk.
Don't even think we pay petrol money.
Oh, man.
It was much more intense than anything I'd seen before, and probably since, really. I'm really excited to talk about this one because, like you said, Westy, there's some absolutely outrageous behind-the-scenes tales to tell.
Yeah, amazing.
And as it's coming up to Halloween, got to talk about a horror film.
Well, of course. Obviously. And what better?
The Texas Chain Saw Massacre was produced by Tobe Hooper, distributed by Bryanston Distribution Company, and released on the 11th of October 1974. Filmed in Central Texas, it was co-written by Tobe Hooper and Kim Henkel, with Hooper also picking up directing duties. It stars Marilyn Burns, Gunnar Hansen, Edwin Neal, Jim Sido, and Paul Partain.
Let's do it.
The beginning.
Straight in as the film starts, a voiceover tells us of the macabre tragedy that befell a group of 5 youths. We then cut to a masterful combination of sound and image as the tone of the film is set immediately. Westy, opening titles and those images.
Fantastic. That opening narration is just amazing. It's almost like a newsreader. John Larroquette read it. And I've read some kind of behind the scenes stuff and some interviews, and he got paid with a joint.
Yeah.
That was it.
Tiny budget.
Yeah. The devil's lettuce. Straight in there. He was in Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. I've had to say that because of John. And he was also Captain Stillman in Stripes, if anyone is aware of who that is.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Larroquette, and that's because he's in Blind Date with Bruce Willis and Kim Basinger.
Yeah,
he plays the mad ex-boyfriend of Basinger. He's hilarious in that.
Yeah, but his narration here is fantastic. It is automatically so unnerving. Like I said, it's almost like a newsreader. It's so matter of fact. It's so based in fact. And you're reading it, and it's getting delivered in that voice. And then you start getting them shots, and it's that sound of that flash and that camera, which reminds me of kind of the autopsy scene in Silence of the Lambs. It's a similar kind of shot.
Yeah, you're right.
But you're actually
punctuating.
Yeah, it's just that it's a punch in the face every single time, and you're just on edge. So, like I say, even if you watch the first 30 seconds of this film and you get that first flash, that's going to stay with you. You still remember it, and then it pulls back from that amazing shot in the graveyard with the corpses on top of the gravestone. And if you see behind the scenes shots of that as well, it was built on set, and Daniel Pearl made this it's like a wooden dolly, but it looks like an old catapult, from old school, like from Ben-Hur or something. It's just really cobbled together with this tiny little Bolex 16mm on the end of it, and this huge kind of dolly. But it looks amazing, and you know exactly what you're getting into. It just pulls no punches from the opening sequence of the film. You're just like, right, okay, this is really uneasy. It just doesn't get any easier after that. I think it starts on top, and it doesn't dip at all. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a great opening to the film.
Yeah, and it's the sound of what seems like, to me, like razor blades going across metal wire.
Yeah.
Like really short, sharp shocks. And then that image of the rotten corpse as the radio tells the story of these horrific grave robberies.
Yeah.
And that camera pulls out to reveal another skull, and then it completes the stark image of this like human effigy.
Yeah,
and it
it's
just
horrible.
hangs on it. Really unsettling.
Really unsettling. And yellow
Awful.
credits as well, which I've got to put in
Of
there.
course, you're over the moon.
Yep, adding to the bank.
Yeah, I think what this opening does, it gives it an edge of realism that you've just never seen in horror cinema before. I mean, this is 5 years before Cannibal Holocaust, isn't it? So it's not found footage, but I think it's trying to give it that edge of truth, that edge of reality that you're going to get later in horror cinema with the found footage thing. And so, I mean, you've got Lara Kett doing that voiceover, and I know Tobe Hooper wanted him to sound like Orson Welles when he did it.
Yes.
Which makes me think, like, was he trying to like get him to mimic the kind of War of the Worlds broadcast that he did, which obviously sent a certain amount of people into panic because they thought that was real.
Of course,
Yeah.
So you go from that, and then you go into the dark, and it's just those sounds of like digging and grunting.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah.
It's pitch black, but
Pitch
all
black.
you hear is a digging sound.
Yeah, so that's all you've got, and then like the flare of those cameras like going off. Which do they even sound like that in real life, or was that like amped up?
It sounds like a flash going off, but it's really amped up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it
what I
is,
thought.
yeah.
It's massively exaggerated.
Yeah, so there you go. Another exaggeration just to put you further on it, and just those quick little glimpses of like rotten fingers and teeth. And you're just sitting there watching this thing, what the hell am I being put through here? And then you get just that slow pullback that you guys have talked about that skull, and with the wind behind it picking up the dust and blowing behind it, so it's like mist. It looks to me like genuinely like apocalyptic, like this is end of the world stuff we're watching here. And underneath that, you've got the news reports, which also reminds me of Night of the Living Dead. You know how you've got the TV reports and that.
Yeah.
Because again, I think Night of the Living Dead, that was another film that tried to give it a real sense of realism. So I think that really adds to it as well. And I love how that plays underneath the credits. Because if you're watching those credits, and again, you think, what, solar flares? Why am I looking at solar flares now?
Yeah.
But that news credit, it's still going underneath. And then when you come back out of that and you get into the Kanban with the 5 kids, that radio's still playing. And if you listen to all that news that's coming on, it's just horrible.
It's like absolutely horrific.
As the buildings collapse, there's bodies of women being found. There's a couple being arrested because they've got an 18-month-old child locked up in an attic.
Yeah.
And
Jesus
it's just
Christ.
this undercurrent of like violence and evil and destruction. It's just incredible. And then that shot of the armadillo, which I find quite interesting because the art director is a guy called Robert Burns, and he was responsible for doing all the various artifacts in the film.
Yeah.
And to help him do that, he bought a book on DIY taxidermy because he thought that'd be useful. So that armadillo was his first attempt at stuffing an animal.
Christ.
Just left on the road.
He thought a book on DIY taxidermy would be useful.
Yeah. I mean, that's
wrote
exactly
that?
where this film's going,
Oh, I'll
isn't it?
pick that up.
But when they got on set as well, they were gifted, because he said that they were gifted when they first got on set, because it was supposed to be a dead dog that was then supposed to go into its eye, and then that was supposed to be kind of like the front light of the camper van. So it's supposed to be like this transition between this dead domestic animal and then going in to see the kids. But they got there, and Tobe Hooper thought that was just too much just to have a dead dog, considering the rest of the film, right? So he's like, oh, that's too much. Really?
Well, that's too much.
Yeah, that's
good
too
of
much. But they got there on set, and there was just a dead horse at the side of the road. And they said, that would be amazing if we go from this decomposing horse with flies all over it, and then we're kind of crane up to the camper van. And then the crew were like, nah, we're not shooting the horse, we're not going anywhere near it because it'll smell too bad. Then they were like, well, we'll just get this armadillo and we'll just run over it and smash its guts everywhere. And then he was like, you're not going to do that, that's my armadillo, like I've made it. And then Tobe Hooper's like, oh no, I never threatened to destroy your armadillo, like it's fine. But that's how it ended up being an armadillo. They had all these different options, and I think it's a really weird choice.
It's a really weird choice. Well, that's one of the images that really stuck in my mind, and there are a few on first watch, but I didn't quite know what it was in my 18-year-old head.
Yeah.
I think, what the fuck is this? And that just really freaked me out. Why is it so close to the screen? Why is it like such big in the frame?
Why am I still looking at it? It's on for about 10 seconds.
Why is it still there? It's an 86-minute film. Stop wasting time. On the narration's claim that it is, or alludes to the fact that it's a true story, not only did people buy that it was actually a true story, but people actually claimed that they knew or knew people who knew, the chainsaw-wielding madman himself. People came up to Gunnar Hansen, who plays Leatherface, and said things like, I've met him, or he's my friend's uncle, or something like that. And when Hansen was saying, no, it was fiction, it was made up, they got really angry with him.
People just need this to be a reality, don't they? They just it addresses so many things and kind of reinforces so many fears that you almost want this to be true so that you can have something to feel scared of that's justifiably scary.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an urban legend come to life, isn't it?
Exactly.
And we all had those growing up as kids, didn't we? We all had like, oh, don't go to that house. The fella who lives there.
The witch's house. Yeah. The truth being that it was based on a number of sources, and we'll go through them as we go. But the most obvious one is serial killer and body snatcher Ed Gein, who inspired films like Psycho and Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
When searching Gein's house, police found things like masks made of human skin and furniture made of human remains, which he dug up from grave sites echoing the scenes from the film. Terrifying stuff.
That's disgusting.
Photographs from his house looked almost exactly like the house in the film. Total disarray, disgusting decay everywhere, apart from his mother's room. His dead mother's room, which was in tip-top condition.
Yeah.
Kept that sparkling.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, mummy's boy.
Yeah.
Did he still have his mother's corpse in the room, though? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. The quote that he said that he literally wanted to slip inside her skin. Yeah,
Great.
disgusting.
Disgusting. But then that comes up in Psycho, doesn't it? Which was a massive influence for that.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So although the actual events of the film aren't true, it has got its foundations in a kind of grim, gritty reality. Disgusting. After the first few stark images that we see, we're introduced to the typical horror trope of 5 friends in a beat-up old Scooby-Doo van, but what follows is not typical at all. They visit their granddaddy's gravesite and are introduced to some unsettling locals before picking up what turns out to be a very, very unusual fella by the side of the road.
It's a nice picture. You can pay me now.
Westy,
Yeah.
the hitchhiker pickup.
The hitchhiker pick that shot, that wide shot of the van coming in.
It's fantastic.
It's superb. It's like the shot in The Godfather with like the Statue of Liberty in the background.
Yeah.
It's as iconic as that. But you've got the dead grass.
It is.
You've got nothing around them. Don't pick them up, for fuck's sake. Every time I watch it now, like, look at him flailing around, like, so excited to get in there. He's fucking horrible, even miles
He's
away.
over the moon.
He's absolutely elated. But, like, you just think, even when you're that far away, don't get us any closer to that situation, please. So what do? They put you in the fucking van with, like, 5 people, and it's so claustrophobic, and everyone's sweating. And Edwin Neal's performance from the start,
fucking brilliant.
Jesus Christ! It's just like, well, it's like it's lucky. It's like, oh, we're shooting a movie because we just picked this guy up and he's just absolutely nuts. Let's just roll the camera on him, you know.
Yeah.
And he based his audition on his cousin, I think, or it was a member of his family, and he just went in and acted like he's a member of his family and got the part.
That's a worry.
It is a worry. Do you want to meet that guy? Definitely not. But again, I mean, as we're talking about the cast, as it'll go on, I think I've discovered, like, from Tobe Hooper to Daniel Pearl to all of the cast members, everyone in this film in real life is a fucking sweetheart. Like, lovely, lovely people.
Out of control, nice guys.
Just coming together to make this, you know, and everyone's on the same page and everyone's going through hell, but everyone's just really, really lovely when they're being interviewed about it. And Edwin Neal especially, I mean, he was decorated Bronze Star for Valor in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Amazing, you know, and my kind of guy, he once had the largest poster collection in the world with posters dating from the 1900s, film posters. My kind of guy. I'll have a pint with him any day. I'll have some head cheese with that guy any day. Absolutely amazing. Great guy. It sets up the rest of the film, and I think the fact that you see the locals as well, going back a little bit, the fact that you see them just so unhinged, and everyone's just crazy. It reminds me of, like, Wake and Fright. Have you seen that? The Australian film.
Yes, I have.
It reminds me of that kind of mentality where everyone's just given up. You feel on edge immediately, and I think a lot of that is down to Edwin Neal. Like, he introduces this film. He introduces all of the characters. He makes you scared of Leatherface when he talks about his brother. You know, he makes you scared of the characters that you're going to encounter, and it's all down to this performance. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, he's his best performance in it for me. I'm just watching him, I'm mesmerised. It's a really, really great performance. Totally unnerving, unhinged.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's got this kind of, like, facial disfigurement really just adds to the whole aura, the whole persona of it.
And the other thing that really adds to it is how clean his teeth are. Immaculate. It puts me right on edge. They're really, really clean. When you contrast that to Leatherface, where Gunnar Hansen actually made got them prosthetics made by his dentist to make his teeth look disgusting. This guy, pristine teeth. Everything else is fucked. But
he's got pearly whites.
He's got pearly whites, and he just thinks, well, this guy likes eating things, and it just puts you on edge. His teeth are massive and white, and it's weird. It's a fucking dead animal around his neck, and a class camera.
Yeah,
and it's just like, well, I used to work there, and then you get this really great introduction, and you get his whole backstory. Actually, it's not necessarily an introduction to him; it's more like a history lesson where he's talking about the slaughterhouse.
Fantastically done exposition.
Yeah, the technology's coming in and putting everybody out of a job, and you hit them with a sledgehammer, and you do it old school, and it's got all that. It paints in the whole society.
After the release of the film, he would go around like drive-in cinemas that were showing the film and wait for his scenes to come on, and then tap people on the shoulder and watch them freak out when they turn around.
Brilliant! I would do that as well.
What a bastard!
You would do, wouldn't you?
Just keep taking photos of people when they come out and just set them on fire.
Matt?
I mean, I think there's some interesting stuff going on just before they pick them up. I mean, Westy, you mentioned the other people who come across, and you said Wake and Fight. I always get a big Deliverance vibe from those locals.
Totally.
Yeah. You're just totally straying into this area where normal rules don't apply. And I think it's interesting where you've got Pam's just talking about the Zodiac and talking about like Saturn's influence, because I always think that kind of ties in with the solar flares and this general idea that, there are forces out there, not necessarily paranormal, but there are forces out there that you just can't control. And like your fate, like everybody's fate is just out of your hands, and what's going to happen to these kids, it was always going to happen to them. Doesn't matter what your star sign says.
Yeah.
When they pick this hitchhiker up, I mean, he's an absolute health and safety nightmare, isn't he? He's got a knife, he's got matches, he's in a confined space. What are you doing? Don't let him in there.
Knife. You like it? It's a good knife.
It's a good knife.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a razor blade. Yeah. He's an idiot.
Like how excited he's getting about like head cheese and what goes into it, and how he was the killer, and he can barely get his words out.
And he invites all of them to the family home.
I don't think he's even doing it with the intention to kill him. I think he's so out of it, he generally thinks they will have dinner with him.
Oh, yeah.
These were his new mates, and they're just gonna hang out. Because he's just so like removed from the plane of normality. He's not even thinking about Leatherface back there, who's gonna like smash all their heads in. I think he generally wants to hang out with them and have dinner. He's absolutely insane, and like he thinks he's impressing them, and you can't understand why they're not and why he's freaking them out.
Completely out of control, isn't he?
When you were little, and there was always that weird kid at school who your mum said you had to invite to your birthday party.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't want to go, he was just going to cause ructions.
Yeah.
Like,
he's weird.
Yeah, he's going to dip the crisps in the cordial again and make us eat them.
Yeah.
Do stuff like that's what the hitchhiker is. He's just all sorts of wrong, but it's a brilliant introduction because there's going to be some bad shit going to happen to these characters.
I love it when they finally kick him out. He's just kicking the van, and he's just everything's just a game.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
When he does offer to have them round for dinner, and they say no, we've got to be moving on. His face, he looks genuinely heartbroken.
Yeah.
But then he kind of gets the idea. I know what I'll do, and then he cuts Franklin's arm.
Yeah.
And that effect of the blood bubbling up and that noise, is horrendous.
Disgusting.
Franklin. I mean, he doesn't do himself any favours, does he?
No,
Not
and he calls
really.
him Dracula, doesn't he?
He's annoying. When he calls him Dracula.
Family of Draculas.
Family of Dracula.
Yeah, all right. Well.
And his tale about how the cows are killed, and that's combined with like close-ups of like drooling cows.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
But then he's doing the whole boom, shh, boom, shh. What a dick.
He's an absolute prick.
Based on that whole head cheese thing, that was actually the name of the film. And that's the name they were going for until maybe a week before the film started.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be sat here talking about the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. We'd be sat here talking about head cheese, which means that we wouldn't be sat here at all.
No,
definitely
way.
not.
I mean, it just sounds disgusting.
So we're 15 minutes into the film. The tone is set for what's to come, but nothing can prepare us for what's to come.
Ugh.
The director.
I'm going to spend some time looking at the man responsible for the whole mess, and that is director Tobe Hooper. So, Matt, what do you think of Tobe Hooper's work on this film?
I think whatever he put that cast and crew through, and we should say right now, he would not get away with it at all today.
No. I mean, he'd be in prison.
Yeah, shut down. Tell you what, you want to do what with a horse? Sorry, no. Well, that's not happening. But whatever he did put them through, those results were up on screen, and you can't deny what he achieved with this. We're not talking about, the first Friday the 13th film, because that has, some decent gore to it, but has nothing else to it. This has genuine, rawness and power to it. And what Hooper's done here, I think he's made a film, and it literally feels ill. This is something, genuinely, sick about this film. I could actually, reach through the screen and touch it.
Yeah.
It just feels, so lived in. And that's because of just the intensity and the, grim determination that Hooper had in his head with what he wanted to do. And, we've mentioned Psycho already. And I think, yeah, he's massively influenced by that. But I think he wants to do is take Psycho, amp it up by 1,000, and then have an ending that doesn't let the audience off the hook. Like Psycho does, lets the audience kind of breathe and decompress. This doesn't do that. He just wants to put people through it from beginning to end. And what it ends up feeling like, it feels like a piece of meat that's just been, left on the side of the road for days, just slowly cooking in the heat and going off, and something really ill and sick and violent and being baked into it. It's just got such an atmosphere that it's just really overpowering, and you can't get away from it. And he wants to show you stuff you've never seen before. He wants you to hear stuff you've never seen before. And really, he just wants you to feel this film. And that's why it's so memorable. And it's when you go out in the sun and you've forgot your cap, you don't have any sunblock, and you get too much sun and you come in and your head's spinning and your skin feels like it's crawling, but you got chills at the same time. That's what this film feels like. It's just so evocative. When I finish watching this, I just want to sit quietly in a room by myself with a cold glass of water, just with silence for half an hour. just crying gently.
Whimpering.
Just bringing myself down to it. And how many horror films have that kind of physical effect on you? There's just not that many. And that all comes from this young, completely inexperienced filmmaker who had this one idea. And this one idea, if I was going to achieve it.
I think you're right. I think very few horror films really have the power and impact that this film does. I think on a personal level, for me, it's Nightmare on Elm Street that really impacts, but that's because I watched it when I was young. But this one, I can't really mention too many more that just put you on edge immediately and keep you there for the whole runtime. And make things worse, and just make things uncomfortable and uncompromising, and put things in front of you that you don't want to see. Not violence, not gore, just unsettling imagery, distorted edits, awful sounds, really horrible. What about you, Westy?
He wanted to do something to make an impact. This is not a film that's been constructed in somebody's head. This is a film that's been made with somebody's gut. This is just complete gut reactions to certain things. I mean, there's a great interview with Daniel Pearl on the ASC website, which you can still watch now. And the studio execs putting the money up went to Tobe Hooper and said, look, you need a shot list. You need to plan this through. We need to know what you're shooting day by day so that you can get organised and figure it out. So he wrote a shot list. Pearl went in, set up for the first shot. Tobe Hooper came in and went, nah, we're not doing that. Changed the whole thing. Came in the second day, set up for the shot list. Tobe Hooper went, we're not doing that again. Changed it. Third day, he went and we said, well, we're doing this shot list tonight. He said, I forgot to tell you, no, we're not sticking to the shot list. I just wrote that down to shut them up. He said, I don't know what I'm doing until I'm here with the actors on the set and I know where I'm going to put things and what I'm going to do. It's very instinctual, this film. It's very from the gut, and that's what unsettles you, because this is one person's complete view to hit something home, to shock you, to not care. And it's so rare in this world to have somebody who's just not influenced by anything else apart from his belief that he wants to make something. It's going to scare the shit out of people. That was the intention, and it does, and it works, and it's raw. This is his film. This is his legacy. He's done nothing that even touches this afterwards.
Nowhere
nothing.
near.
Poltergeist, it's all right. It's not a Tobe Hooper film, though. This is Tobe Hooper's film, and he peaked at 23. And if people just could plug in even 20% of that and put their absolute passion into something, I think cinema would be vastly improved these days. And Tobe Hooper, for me, based on this one film, is one of the greatest directors cinemas have ever seen because of that reason.
Wow, big praise. Yeah. I mean, he's certainly in horror history. He's up there with the big boys just for this film alone. Absolutely incredible.
His work ethic, I mean, he's got the work ethic of Fincher. He's got the kind of the grit and the determination of Friedkin. He's got the imagination of Craven, and he's got the originality of Hitchcock. At 23 years old, he's just all of them things in this film.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing, though, because I've got a quote from him. He says, by the time I finished the film, I think everyone hated me. It took them years to cool off. And apparently the first time he saw Gunnar Hansen after the film had come out, they were in some kind of Hollywood production meeting. He actually backed away from Hansen because he thought he was going to go for him, like with everything he'd put him through. But Hansen was actually, no, I really appreciate what you did for us as an actor. You let me build this character up, and you really went for it, and I appreciate that. So one thing we should say, I don't think Hooper was a sadistic guy in that sense.
Not at all.
I think he generally knew what he was putting people through, and he was thankful for it, and he was probably quite regretful, but he still knew what he wanted to achieve, and he just went for it.
Yeah.
Edwin Neal said he wanted to kill him on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kill Tobe Hooper every single day. And he said his experience on the set of the Texas Chain Saw Massacre was the worst experience of his life. And he said, I've been in Vietnam.
I think what Hooper does amazingly well is make use of the whole frame of everything in there is absolutely vital to setting the tone for the entire film. Every single scene is unsettling. Like the close-up of the spider's nest at the family home.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
I've never seen spiders like that in my life before.
No, it's awful. And that animal carcass on the front porch that Franklin finds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that carcass is.
No.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
I know, it's awful. It's awful.
I think the genius about Hooper and this film is it's an absolute masterclass in subliminal imagery. It's not what you see, it's what you don't see. And he does that to such a level in this. Like, you just think, oh, I've seen everybody die. Everyone dies by a chainsaw. Everyone's just absolutely hacked to pieces, and there's shit flying everywhere. There's not a thing in this. It's so clever. The thing I always find absolutely hilarious is that he wanted to make this a PG.
I know.
How can I make it a PG? But don't make it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Oh, I'm off to the cinema with the kids and the wife at the weekend. Lovely, what are you going to see? It's a film called The Texas Chain Saw Massacre. Oh, well, that all seems in order then.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. As well as the exploits of Ed Gein, Tobe Hooper drew on some personal experience for the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. The inspiration for the iconic chainsaw came to him at a local shopping mall. He was doing a spot of Christmas shopping in 1972 and said, "There were these big Christmas crowds, I was frustrated. I found myself near a rack of chainsaws and I just kind of zoned in. I thought, I know a way I could get through this crowd really quickly."
We've all been there, to be fair. Like. Christmas is a nightmare.
He said that I went home, sat down, and all the channels tuned in. The zeitgeist blew through. The whole damn story came to me in what seemed like 30 seconds. The hitchhiker, the girl escaping twice, the dinner sequence, people out in the country out of gas. It all came through in that what seemed like 30 seconds.
Amazing.
And a much more serious inspiration came to Hooper from another personal experience of his, really quite grim. There was a horrendous mass shooting, one of the worst in history, at the University of Texas in 1966.
Yeah.
And Hooper was actually there when it happened.
Wow.
Okay.
And apparently a policeman came up to him and told him to get the fuck out of there because there was somebody shooting from the tower. And as the policeman said this, he was shot before Hooper's very eyes.
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah. Hooper scuttled for shelter, and he said that this was a sign of darkness in the world, and a darkness that he would channel into the film.
Which he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Miserable.
Yeah.
I mentioned Patreon at the start, and as we've mentioned in previous episodes, one of the benefits of that is that you can be part of the show, you can come and ask us questions. So from Jamie Russell on Patreon, he said that he remembers James Furman, who was the BBFC chairman, like mid to late 90s. He said that he had a huge influence in the censoring of horror films, and I do remember James Herman because I was thinking he was Public Enemy #1 because he wouldn't pass The Exorcist. I remember that name very, very vividly. He said that I've also read about viewers who've come away from watching the film claiming that it was bloodily violent when it almost certainly has got no violence whatsoever, or very, very little. Mm-hmm. So he asks, why do you think this film so often has such a profound impact on those who watch it, despite having very little violence?
Because the level of realism that's applied to it, that everything's made, nothing feels like exaggerated. Mm-hmm. It just feels like this could happen, that it's possible. And I think that's why it resonates with people. Lack of any morality in this film and this landscape, that shocks people. That's what really upsets people and really scares people. That people, if somebody has a complete disregard for human life, no matter how that life ends, if it's violent or if it's not, or if it's quiet, it's still terrifying. So I think that's the whole point. I think the point of this film is to unsettle.
Yeah. I think, like all the greats, some of which we've talked about, like Seven, Silence of the Lambs, it's about what you don't see that makes the biggest impact because it's left up to your imagination. And I think that tone is set immediately, which shrouds the whole feeling of the film itself.
Yeah.
That it's set with the opening crawl, and then those opening photographs, and then it ramps up. It leaves a residual film across the whole rest of the picture from those opening shots.
Yeah.
So you've got that, and you're thinking about that already, on top of everything else that you're trying to process as well.
Yeah.
It's the sound as well. I mean, the sound is just such an impact on what you see. It's when the chainsaw strikes, or when Edwin Neal's blade strikes on Franklin. It's the sound that's really horrifying. It's not the visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to the sound design, it's in this whole film, it's like a slaughterhouse, it's like an abattoir. We know these places exist. We know that exists, but you can imagine what it sounds like, and you can imagine what it looks like. It's based in reality. We know that this exists.
I mean, literally, it's based on that. Noises from slaughterhouses was picked up and used in the sound design. And it's like off-key musical chords and cymbals being hit.
Yeah.
Just randomly. That really disorientate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I think the fact it just skips like any conventional narrative setup at all. Mm-hmm. You can't pick anyone out and say, oh yeah, that person's going to be the hero, because none of them are set up like that.
Totally.
You know, even, you know, the driver, you find out nothing about him. Kirk, you know nothing about him. He hardly gets any lines. You know, and then you've got Franklin, you've got Sally, Pam, just no one stands out. So right from the start, I think, well, who am I with here? They just feel like, you know, we've talked about the slaughterhouse thing, but they all feel right from the beginning like cattle going to the slaughter. They're just a herd. The pack, there's nothing like really individual about them. So that puts you off. All these things we've talked about that give it this sense of almost like a documentary, that sense of realism. Mm-hmm. You'd just never seen that before, and not to the level and the intensity that Hooper gives it to you here. I mean, the whole film, with those sounds, that soundtrack, the use of editing, it's just a whole assault on your senses, and it's just coming at you from all angles. And there's no point in the film that gives you an out. There's no point in the film where you can relax, because even just fairly ordinary scenes of them going to that first house, like, see, you've got that thing about the spiders just bursting out. You've got the sounds underneath. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And because you're on edge right from the start, and it's creeping you out on a level that you probably can't explain, I think your brain starts to fill in the details for you. Mm-hmm. I mean, the editing in this film is absolutely
supreme.
Mm-hmm.
Because the editing and the sound tells you what's going on, even though you don't see it. And because you don't see it, your brain starts to tell you, no, actually you did see, you know, guts flying across the screen. You did see, you know, that hook go right into Pam's back. You didn't, but your brain's telling you did. I mean, this film, like, technically, it may look rough, but it's a technical marvel.
It is. Yeah. Once you peel back the layers of the brutality of it, you really get to see the in-depth detail and what went into the film. The technical detail, the level of technical skill on show is mesmerising.
Yeah. Well, Hooper edited this in his own house, didn't he? Because he couldn't afford... So, you know, that he's just bringing it into his own house. He's living with this film. He's either on set or he's bringing it home with him. And that's why it feels so personal. And that's why
you're right.
It resonates, because he couldn't escape from it. So why should you?
Yeah, and he had all these like really weird instruments in the next room, so he had it all set up with a mic. And he said he found this one from a marketplace, which was just a bit of wood with strings pulled over it with like little symbols on it. And then he had the idea just to drag a knife across it and just record that as just this real kind of pull. And I think that's what you get from the flashes at the start of the film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my favourite ever final cut to black in cinema history, I think.
It's marvellous, because there's so much noise and sound and screaming and whirring, chainsaws going on, and then bang, stop, black.
You know, it's almost like it plants the seed, and then you have to then watch that disgusting cactus grow in your head, you know, for the rest of your life. It's amazing.
For the rest of your life.
Well, you do. Try and get rid of it. Go on.
So if you are listening and you haven't seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's what you'll have to put up with if you do go and watch it.
Yeah.
A cactus that lives in your brain and you'll have to deal with for the rest of your life.
Yeah, sounds good, doesn't it?
Nobody's watching that. Nobody's going near this film now.
You'll realise how good your life used to be once you've seen this.
Production started on the film in 1973 as a result of a $60,000 budget for the film put forward by a fellow by the name of Bill Parsley. He was a member of the Texas legislature who wanted to get into movies. Production was fraught with tension, danger, outrageous filming conditions. Mm-hmm. It was a 2-week filming schedule that eventually doubled to 4 weeks. in what Hooper described as an interesting summer. That's a mild way of putting it.
Yeah, it's like 12 to 16 hour days for 32 days.
Yeah.
Like one after the other.
Brutal
As fuck.
Interesting. And in that time, the heat swelled to 100 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's around 37 to 46 Celsius for people in the UK.
Oof.
Pretty bloody hot.
Awful.
There was one usable bathroom being used by all the cast and crew, and the wardrobe department was a little thin on the ground as well. So every cast member had only one costume, and worse still, they couldn't wash their clothes because it would create like continuity errors all over the shop. So that's 4 weeks in the melting Texan sun, running around in dirty clothes that are getting dirtier, and using a bathroom that 30 other people have used before you.
But that smelled pretty.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. Not helping matters was the set design as well, which consisted of actual carcasses of varying states of decay from cattle lying around the surrounding areas. Blood from the local abattoir was splashed all over the walls, and real animal meat was rotten in the heat in the house.
Yeah.
I know they had to, like, between takes, some of the crew and the cast would take turns to run to a window, open it, vomit, and then go back and let someone else go up.
Vomit
open
and a
window,
bit of fresh air, and then back to it.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
And the sound guy said he had it worse because he was up with the boom mic, and he said, well, heat rises and so does the smell.
Yeah.
So he said he was just over the top of everyone, like over the top of Gunnar Hansen. He was massive guy, sweating like a pig. Absolutely disgusting. But you can tell, like, there's that chicken thing on the table that started to decompose. I mean, it looks great, but it's not massively necessary. But you can tell, like, if they filmed this in a cooled set and everything was fine and it smelled like pot puree, you wouldn't get
Wonderful.
this. It's the same with The Exorcist when they were fucking freezing.
Minus 50.
That comes. This is the opposite. It's just the other end of the spectrum, but that's why it works.
Hooper said, by the time I finished the film, I think everybody hated me, but I knew what I wanted and I knew how to get it. Kind of echoes what you fellas have been saying.
Yeah.
Add an insult to literal injury, and we'll get to that later. The cast took profit shares in the film as opposed to an actual salary, but their profit shares were in a company called Vortex, which was set up by Hooper and co-writer Kim Hinkle, and Vortex only owned 50% of the film, and the other half was owned by Bill Parsley, the financier that I mentioned a bit ago. This meant that the cast saw virtually no payment for their efforts, and Ed Neal said, 3 months, no check. 6 months, no check. 9 months, a check for $28.45. We were angry.
I'm surprised.
No shit.
Jesus.
And then the final nail in the coffin. Bryanston Distributors acquired the film for around $225,000 in 1974, and it made millions in its first year. But they only declared that it made around about $1 million. And the reason for that is that Bryanston turned out to be a front for the mob owned by Joe and Lou Perino of the Colombo crime family.
Yeah.
They used the film to launder the mega profits that they made from the film Deep Throat.
Yeah.
And then when all this came out, they were arrested on obscenity charges. The cast and crew sued and they were awarded about $25,000 apiece. But, I mean, mafia connections, terrible conditions, no pay,
Deep Throat in there.
16-hour days, insane.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't happen.
No. You could make a great comedy, to be fair, out of the making of this, because it's farcical, some of the stuff, isn't it?
No.
The mafia were fronting the money for this. What?
I know, ridiculous. And then you've got Leatherface, who's wearing 3-inch heels because he wanted him to be taller, so he's hitting his head off the windows and off the door frames all the time. Oh, fucking hell. Netflix, are you listening?
Get the Farrelly brothers back.
This was Tobe Hooper's second feature after the 1969's Eggshells. He did direct Poltergeist, like Westy mentioned, in 1982. Another classic, but films like Eaten Alive, The Fun House, Texas Chain Saw Massacre Part 2, and Life Force in particular were spectacular missteps. But with the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, Hooper was a maverick director who etched his name into the annals of the greats of the genre.
Sure did.
The cast.
Main cast on the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, we've got two that we're going to focus on. We'll get to Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface in a moment. But firstly, the final girl.
Yep.
Sally Hardesty, played by Marilyn Burns. Matt, thoughts on this performance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Hooper didn't have the money, did he, to go and cast top-of-the-line actors for this.
No.
So I think you've got to bear that in mind, like, with her performance. It's never going to be one that's going to be held up in drama school or in acting classes. You know, this is a great performance.
She's not Sally Field. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So Sally, but she's not Sally Field. There's a few kind of like little wooden line readings in there, here and there, but it's still an incredibly iconic performance, because if you think of great like horror performances, she is at the top of the list, because that final descent into mania, insanity, whatever you want to call it, it's just so incredibly convincing, probably because Hooper had pushed her there like he was pushing everyone.
Yes.
So you've got to give her credit to that. I mean, just that final image of her with her eyes like just bulging out of her head, just looking like going to pop, basically, driving away, screaming. You look at her as a character, you think, you know what, she's not going to calm down when she gets like a diner.
No, Christ, no.
Has a coffee, she's gone mentally, she's broken.
Yeah.
And you have to give Marilyn Burns credit for that is coming out of her. However she got to that pitch of insanity, whether she enjoyed getting there or not, I would think not. Probably a bit like what we talked about with Shelley Duvall in The Shining.
Yeah.
The treatment of her, how she got there.
Absolutely.
But the proof is on screen. So like I say, in terms of performance as a whole, can't really say like it's brilliant in general. But by the end, you're entirely sympathetic to her. And just that level that she's hitting by the end, once you've seen it, you're never going to forget it.
Yeah, I think she perfectly encapsulates the answer to the tagline, which is who will survive and what will be left of them. That final scene that you said, Matt, that she's gone. She's an absolute goner.
Yeah.
But I think she's very similar to what you were saying, Matt. She's pretty anonymous, kind of, until Franklin and her go to search for the others, and then you start to understand her as a character a bit more. And I believe when she starts to break down and Franklin's not helping matters at all with her.
There's a shock.
I think the fact that we don't know who the last person standing will be, the classic final girl trope, I think that's really effective, and it only becomes more evident as the film goes on. In terms of kind of classic final girls, I think, like you said, Matt, I absolutely agree. She's up there with some of the best. I think the performance is better than Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween.
Yeah,
right.
Me too.
Okay.
I think the performance possibly rivals Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street as well, at the luncheon camp. I think it's absolutely believable. There may be a couple of wooden lines, Matt, but I can't quite identify them. I can't quite think of them.
Right, okay.
Think of them here and now, whereas there are loads in Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Too many.
Fair, yeah.
And far too many. It's this performance and this absolute descent where it's just her running around screaming, and that sounds pretty easy. I mean, all three of us could do that, and tell we could do it in our sleep, but it's so effective.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
I mean, the physicality of it, like how many times she would have had to do it.
100%, yeah. I mean, that's 4 weeks, 12 to 16 hour days, just running around.
In stinking clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, she did say, like, on that, like, I take my pants off at the end of the day, and they'd walk away on their own.
Yeah.
Awful, yeah. Well, she was caked in so much blood, like stage blood, right at the end, that she said it was almost like cement all over our body.
Yeah.
Jesus. Westy?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what you guys have said, but I do feel that she is the blueprint for the final girl, which she is, and I think the look and I think the way that she acts, I think has been emulated and has been studied, and I think she deserves a lot more credit than, it's not a theatre actress performance, it hasn't got that, real unwritten emotional depth that is just made with a glance to one side, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all in her eyes, and it's not, but to do this with such conviction that makes it so believable. I think it doesn't feel like a performance, it just feels like an experience, like the whole film, and I think she's perfect for it. I think she was fantastic in it. And I know that final scene that you guys have spoke about, that she got a call after she'd finished that scene from Tobe Hooper and said, we're going to have to go again, we didn't get it, it's not how I wanted it to look. So then she had to go back and do it again, and she said, me screaming in the back of that truck was not acting, that was me with the absolute glee and relief that I don't ever have to do this again. And that isn't acting, that's just the result of everything that was put into this film, and I think she's absolutely part of it. I think for me she is a standout. I think she's a bit better than Pam. Like Luke was saying, she's not really there until she goes off with Franklin, and then like Luke said, and then you start to go, all right, well, I didn't even realise she was in the film. You know?
Exactly, because Franklin's front and centre, really.
Yeah,
You only recognise him as a character.
And then she feels like she's just part of that, and she's obviously pushing Franklin through the film physically. And then when he's out of there, you just think, well, Jesus Christ, well, she's definitely done for then, because she hasn't got any real backstory, or any way you didn't even know she was there, which adds to the rest of the film. It adds to that tension. I mean, you talk about the physicality of it. She jumps out of more windows in this film than people die of chainsaws.
In the Texas Chain Saw Massacre.
In the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. We call it the Texas window escape. Do you know?
No, it's not a massacre, is it? Well, we will come back to Marilyn Burns as Sally as we go on in the conversation, but we're going to hand over now to Gunnar Hansen as iconic villain, super villain, Leatherface, Westy.
Love him. Great, isn't he?
Love him.
Yeah, what a lovely little
Unusual.
guy. I know Gunnar Hansen put so much into this, and you can see when he got interviewed, even just before his death, when he's talking about this character, I think it means a lot to him to portray this and get it right. He stayed at a school for special needs kids just to kind of get that movement and just to see how they would react to things. And he does feel like a massive child in this. To me, he feels like a victim. You know, if you see it from his point of view, he's being attacked. He doesn't know where these people are coming from. He's defending himself, more or less. And he is a really tortured soul and a really tortured character. When he's sitting in that front room and his head's in his hands and he's just like, doesn't know what he's doing, and he's just scared, he's terrified, but it's just his appearance and everything that comes with that makes him such an iconic character. Just that whole look, the way he runs, the way he uses it, he moves with that chain. So all of his moves, everything about him, even when his eyes are moving out the window and you've got them prosthetics in his mouth and he's just kind of licking the teeth, and it's just all of these little bits. It could very well have just been very threatening, and it is threatening, but it has got this naivety to it. It has got this
layers.
Big,
there are layers there.
Yeah, he's like a big baby with a sledgehammer and a chainsaw. It's just absolutely terrifying.
The worst kind of big baby.
Imagine.
Terrifying. I'm having nightmares tonight.
Yeah, a big baby with a man's face, like over his own, made from human skin, just trying to please everyone. And like in the dinner scene, he like plays mum, and he's got the apron on, and he's got like the makeup on his face, and he's just, all his personalities are just changed with what he wears. And it's such a confused and, again, really terrifying character, because you can't relate to that whatsoever. This is an absolutely lost human being.
Yeah, it's quite the performance, considering he's got no dialogue whatsoever and he's just whimpers and babbly noises.
Yeah.
And we can't see his face either, so not unlike Sally, it's all in his physicality. The way he shuffles his body around, particularly in that moment when he gets real, when he ices Jerry, his third victim.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, Westy, he's frantically rushing around the house looking to see if there's anybody else. And then he looks out the window and then sits there with his head in his hands thinking, what the fuck is happening here? Where are these people coming from?
Yeah.
So he is just trying to defend himself, but, I mean, obviously he takes it a step too far.
Yeah, just one step.
Not just...
He fucking triple jumps it.
Just the one step.
Hop, step and a jump.
Matt, what do you think about Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface?
Yeah, you know what? It would be really easy to say, oh, you just need a big guy in a suit. That's all you needed. But, you know, we're talking about Gunnar Hansen. I couldn't even tell you who plays Leatherface in the 2003 remake. Don't have a clue.
No.
Because whoever it was doesn't bring anything like what Gunnar Hansen brings here. And it's what you guys said. It's those little flickers of humanity there when he's got like 3 new corpses in the house and he's like, what the fuck? Just like 5 minutes ago I was having a fine old time with my chainsaw. Now there's 3 dead bodies around the place. What do I do? Because you know, on repeat viewings, he's now probably thinking what's going to happen when the cook and the hitchhiker come home. How's he going to explain it to them?
Yeah,
you know, so that's probably what he's freaking out about. And that's all down to Hansen. And he did do the research, and by all accounts, he was an absolute gentle giant. Like everyone, he ended up stinking, but he stank so bad that people stopped eating the food around him at like big times. So I just feel really sorry for him. No one could like eat around him by the end. And he just really put himself into it. When he kills Jerry, apparently that scream was genuine because it was the first time he saw him in the costume, and obviously he just jumps out at him, which, you know, if that's true, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and revisit that scene, it's a shriek.
It is, it's a proper girly shriek, like, isn't it? Yeah.
They were avoiding him because he stunk. Stunk the place out. but also because they were doing a little bit of method acting. They didn't want to hang around with a person who was going to kill them.
Right.
So that's the first time that Jerry saw him all done up like a kipper.
Right.
It's a really great story because Jerry's in that kitchen. Pam's just come out of the freezer. And that's a jump scare. And he said they had one of the prop guys had a hold of the actor's belt in the back of his pants on his jeans. And what was going to happen is Gunnar Hansen was going to come in, swing the hammer at him, but because the hammer was real, obviously that he needed to kind of react in a certain way. So he comes in, swings the hammer at him, and then the guy playing Jerry just punches the guy out the way, gets rid of the hand on his belt, and just legs it out the room. Just absolutely shitting himself on the first take. So he was supposed to get pulled down onto the floor with a hammerhead. He just saw him come through the door. He's like, "Fuck!" and just legged it. Which you would. Amazing.
Yeah. Of course. Before deciding on the character of Leatherface and the chainsaw, the story had trolls underneath a bridge as the main antagonists.
Wow.
Not as scary.
No.
Billy Goat's Gruff.
Yeah.
Shit.
This all changed when Tobe Hooper was told a story by a doctor that he knew. And this doctor was a student, and his class was studying dead bodies, and they visited a morgue. And while this doctor was there at the morgue, for some reason he decided to skin the dead body that was there and make a Halloween mask out of him.
Oh, sound.
And Hooper heard this story and thought, "You're weird, but that's perfect for this horror film."
Pretty sure doctors aren't allowed to do that.
No. That goes against the Hippocratic Oath, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I would think so.
Oh, the 70s.
So Hooper decided that Leatherface would have different masks for different occasions, which is why you see the plain mask at the start and then grandma mask when he's preparing dinner.
Yeah.
That's to show his domestic side, and then he's all caked in makeup, all done up like a dog's dinner. Yeah. When they sit down, he can scrub up well, he's got a full suit on.
Yeah, lovely.
Snappy dresser.
Jesus.
Hooper saw the film as an opportunity to go against typical genre conventions of the day. He noted a lack of sentimentality and the brutality of things in newspaper reports that confirmed to him that man was the real monster, just wearing a different face. And, you know, he had this kind of Grimm's fairy tale archetype that runs through the film as well, but he said that the monster is man, and you can relate to that more than a monster. Finally, he said, "My memory of shooting this film was that it was miserable, hot, and very, very hard work."
Yeah.
Pays off though, right?
Not really for him. What did you get? $800?
The Texas Chain Saw Massacre was the first credit roll for both Burns and Hansen. Burns would later appear in some of the Chainsaw sequels, and Hansen would go on to appear in films with similar titles. Some highlights include Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, Chainsaw Sally, Brutal Massacre, and Reykjavik Whale Watching Massacre.
Whale Watching Massacre.
That sounds very placid for some reason.
Yeah.
Sounds very fucking specific.
Despite those classics, Burns, and in particular Hansen, will always be known for their film debuts.
Absolutely.
Yep.
The middle.
Moving into the middle segment of the film, our friends stop for a fill-up at a local gas station and are warned by the owner to not mess around in them old houses. He offers them some questionable-looking barbecue as well.
Yeah.
They make it to the old family homestead, and Kirk and Pam go out to search for the lake. And we're tracking them as they find out the lake has run dry before they go to a house nearby for some gas. Matt, terrifying?
Oh, I mean, just about. I mean, you talk about great what the fuck moments in cinema. This, I mean, it's got to be up there, hasn't it? In terms of horror cinema, just as one small individual scene, it's arguably the best because it's just so out of nowhere and it's so out of anyone's like conception of what reality is.
Yeah.
Just the fact that when Kirk goes in the house and Leatherface is obviously off screen and you don't know he's coming, but he's making the pig noises.
Mm-hmm.
Is that him or is that an actual pig that he's slaughtering?
No, because when he goes to hit him, it's a pig scream as he like raises the hand.
Yeah. It is. It sounds like a pig.
Yeah.
Squeal like a pig, boy.
Yeah, exactly. So why is he just making those noises to himself anyway? But
it's awful.
I mean, we've talked about the editing, but I think this is a great example because this sequence is so brilliantly done. I love that little stumble that Kirk does as he walks up the ramp.
That. Yeah, that's perfect.
It is, because that just throws you, because you're just expecting a normal walk. So the fact that he stumbles, that kind of just throws you off a little bit already. So then when Leatherface just pops out and the camera tilts up to his face, but all this is like really quick cuts. So you're like, what the fuck is that? But then it goes away from his face, and it's just that hammer blow, and then his legs kicking, and then the second hammer blow, and then slam that steel door shut, and then the sound just goes. Honestly, you're like, what the fuck have I just seen?
It's amazing. That's that
incredible.
door that you didn't know was a door. Slam shut, bang.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Amazing. Lovely use of words there as well, Matt, when Leatherface pops out. Well, hello!
Hi.
Hello!
I'm Leatherface.
I would say
Just
when
pops
he...
his head round the corner.
Yeah, when he brutally emerges.
Can I
Shall I
help?
pop the kettle on? Well, Kirk gives Pam that rotten tooth as a keepsake, which, I mean, you know, that's nice of him.
No, lovely.
Romantic guy.
I mean, that drops from nowhere, and that's a sign of things to come. That's a big red flag for Kirk to get out of there.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't follow up on this impulse. Some things are more important than getting gas.
Yeah.
Nothing could prepare you for that 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Incredible. What about you, Westy?
Yeah, it's my favourite scene in the whole film. I love the fact that this is broad daylight as well. It's terrifying. You don't really expect it, but when you're in that house, it feels like midnight. Like there's just it's just timeless. It's just constantly locked in that horrible. Even if it's night or day, you just for a fact that there's no pleasure in there whatsoever. There's just no joy in that house whatsoever. It's completely sadistic. Just get the fuck out. There's a ramp going up to skulls on a red wall.
That's a bad sign.
Of course it is. Imagine that. But and he still goes ahead with it. And then Gunnar Hansen said that everything that he uses in this film is like real. That's a real chainsaw. This is a real hammer. So he's swinging at him, and he actually hits him at one point. And then he starts doing all the leg kicks, which that always just puts me on edge, because it's like it was alluded to in the car with the hitchhiker when he says, that's the best way to kill him is with a hammer, and he's kicking almost like an animal would be, reacting to it. All the skull fragments has entered his brain, and he's just flipping out. He drags Kirk in, throws him, slams the door, and then Gunnar Hansen just turned around immediately and was like, "Are you all right, mate? I think I hit you there with a hammer a little bit. Are you all right?" It's one of my favourite ever cuts as well. It goes from that door slamming to her on that bench.
Yeah.
Just that back shot. And this is one of my favourite shots. Well, it's my favourite shot in the whole film, but it's one of my favourite shots ever, which was done when Daniel Pearl was like, a great idea for a shot. We've got this raised track, and it was on skateboard wheels, and they didn't have anything to hold the camera on. So he's lying on this skateboard, more or less. And he said, I think I can fit underneath the swing, and then it's going to be on a wide lens. As it gets closer to the house is going to engulf the whole frame.
And it just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and it just engulfs her, and it's such a smooth shot from him to hold it on a skateboard, handheld, and to get that spot on. It reminds me of Michael Chapman's technique in Taxi Driver when he's getting the shot from the top. That's handheld, and it's kind of like a one-take thing, and he nailed it first take. And he said that was one of his proudest moments, was to fight for that shot. And he told Tobe Hooper about it. He's like, we are fucking doing that. So it took them a while to get that set up, and they nailed it. But for me, it's one of the finest shots. And Daniel Pearl said he met Steven Spielberg when he was shooting 1941.
Yeah.
And he said Spielberg came up, was like, yo, you shot the Texas Chain Saw Massacre? And the people around, he said he just put his arm around him and just walked him away and just said, tell us about that shot under the swing. How the fuck did you do that? That's Spielberg, so he just made that kind of impact on it.
When Pam does go into the house, and the scene that is the most like nausea-inducing scene I've ever seen in film. She follows him in.
Yeah.
And she kind of trips into the living room and surrounded by this pile of feathers, a huge turkey in a tiny bird cage, all this really fucking weird imagery, bones and teeth strewn around the floor, and like a two-seater chair made of people's bones, hands and skulls that are hanging from the ceiling. What the hell's going on here? And then the camera tracks all of this mayhem with uncomfortable zooms and loads of flash cuts, and she's screaming as Leatherface comes out. It's so prolonged, that scene of tracking all of this carnage in this, and then and you said it on the 7 episode, Westy, but I can smell that room. I can feel the feathers in the back of my throat.
It's her reaction as well, coughing and gagging to it. And oh, it's just so well done, and you can totally feel the atmosphere of that room. And when she gets put on that hook, there's no real sound effect, there's no real impact. It's just you feel it going in,
and she stops screaming.
I think the original plan was to have the hook come out the front and spurt blood,
right?
But they just said, well, no, we don't need to do that. Honestly, just put her up there and it's going to be 10 times worse, and it really is.
We'll not get a PG rating if we do that.
That's a step too far.
And the fact that she is alive, but she's looking at her boyfriend being chopped up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just nightmare stuff, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's a proper nightmare
is.
there. Like when you have
Yeah.
one and you can't wake up out of it. That's what that scene feels like to me.
You know, we were talking just before about Leatherface going one step too far, just one step.
Yeah.
Well, the whole events of the film could conceivably not be a crime at all. The Texan Penal Code of 1974 states that in the event of trespass, deadly force is even justified when reasonably believed to be immediately necessary to preserve the other's life in an emergency. Leatherface could argue that he was acting in self-defence.
Yeah, lovely. Imagine him on the stand just screaming like a pig.
He'll be done up though. He'll
Yeah,
have the
different
makeup
mask
on.
on.
You'll have a suit on, don't worry.
You'll draw some eyebrows on it in a tash. It's like, and what have you got to say for yourself?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty, yeah, it's fine. Exhibit A, hammer. Exhibit B, chainsaw.
As time goes on, Jerry goes out to look for Pam and Kirk before it gets dark and suffers a similar fate at the hands of Leatherface when he finds Pam in the deep freeze. It's now dark. Sally and Franklin decide to go looking for the missing three friends, and this is the scene that we're looking at as Leatherface appears out of nowhere with his signature chainsaw.
Sally, I hear something. Stop.
Matt.
I mean, I just love that shot you get of Leatherface as he just rears up and he's only lit by that torch that they've got.
Yeah.
And again, it's another example. It's a really quick scene. It doesn't need to be any longer than it is. Doesn't dwell on it. And it's a fantastic example of how good the editing is here, because you are convinced, Franklin gets the chainsaw right in the guts. Finally, you do get someone killed by the chainsaw.
Yeah, you
just
do
the one.
at last.
Yeah.
And it's the right person.
It is, yes. It's what we've been waiting for. But you are convinced you see more than you do. And you don't. I think you maybe see like a little spray of blood go up on the Leatherface, but that's it.
Yeah.
You don't see it go into Franklin. You don't see any actual injury on him. But the editing's so good that it just completely convinces you otherwise. And I think it's also quite brave that you've had this character in a wheelchair throughout the film just killed off in this incredibly brutal way.
Yeah.
It's like by now, if you're not already convinced that all bets are off in this film, this is the final proof you need. Doesn't matter, this character's in a wheelchair, we're still going to eviscerate him, basically.
Yeah.
So that's great.
So that's great.
So that's great. Well, not the most likeable guy, was he?
He wasn't.
It's really, really nightmarish. But I do think there is something that's almost a little comical about it, because he is permanently like 3 or 4 feet behind her. He never seems to gain an inch. And I do laugh when she gets to the house, realises, oh no, I don't want to be in this house, when she finds the 2 corpses upstairs.
Yeah, and what else she finds is a skeleton of a cat with another cat's fur on top of it.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Hilarious.
If you desensitize yourself to it and you watch it maybe 5 or 6 times, I was howling watching that part. Why have they gone to that much trouble?
Yeah, why not just stick the original cat? But I do find, like, I've said this before, there are moments of genuine humour in this, and I do think this is one, because it's almost farcical how long that chase sequence takes when she runs back to the gas station.
Westy, what about you?
Yeah, I love this scene. Like, Franklin's fucked immediately. Like, they're going into, like, the woodland. He's in a wheelchair. It doesn't really bode well. You've seen what's happened to the other guys. There's this really great full moon imagery. I love the fact it holds on the moon until you see all of it. The clouds clear, which then goes into the headlights of the van, which then goes into the torch. So you've got this real full moon foreboding imagery that you're going to see something that you don't really want to. But I think they play it out just right. There's just enough time, because you hear, like, there's like a generator, which you think is the chainsaw just in the background. And as they get closer and closer to the house, that gets slightly louder and slightly louder. And you think, oh, that must be the chainsaw. He's not that close yet. It's something else. And that throws you off with the sound design. They start getting a little bit more comfortable when they see the house. Oh, there's a house there, all right. And then I hear something. And he says it a couple of times. And then because the character the way he is, because he's such a whiny bastard, you kind of shut off from him. And when he starts repeating himself, you just ignore it. And then his last thing is, oh, I can hear something. And then Leatherface comes out, so you've almost ignored Franklin as an audience member. You've kind of dismissed him and don't listen to what he's saying, and then you suffer for that the same as everybody else does. I think it's a fantastic jump scare. It's probably one of the scariest bit in the film for me.
Yeah,
he's out there, and you just think, "Oh, fucking hell!" And then she does wait quite a bit watching Franklin get carved up. She's there a while. I mean, that could be.
She's there a while, just screaming. Yeah,
it's just like, what the fuck.
I think the tension's built up when she's really kind of caught into the brambles and she can't get out, and Leatherface is just sawing his way through. But I just think the dread of the situation has built. Her 3 friends have gone missing. One of them's her boyfriend. Yeah. So she's obviously a little bit on edge, and she's really pissed off with Franklin.
Yeah.
Right, super pissed off, as we all are. But then, what's going through her head when she sees this image tearing her brother apart?
No.
I like the fact that it is almost pitch blackness, and you can't see too much of what's going on, which makes that torch on Leatherface much more impactful.
Yeah, definitely.
So on Franklin, we've talked about him a little bit, but have you got any thoughts about the man that is Franklin, played by Paul Partain?
I think he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. This trip's not for him. But he kind of acts like he knows.
To be fair, it's not for anyone.
No, it's not. But, you know, a road trip.
No one enjoys it.
No, not in the end they don't, but it starts fairly nice. You know, in the van with the lads. And it's just like across country, you know, let's say some scenery. This is all great. And then it just goes a bit tits up. But I think he's just completely not suited to be there. I think, you know, for a fact that he thinks it's just, he's got control of the whole thing. Like, it gives the same advice all the time. Oh, there's a path between them trees down there. Oh, where you going? There's a path between them trees down there. And I always find it really, really cringy when, I get it why he's done it, but when he goes in, he rolls in, and they're upstairs, they're having a good time, and he just blows raspberries over and over and over again.
That's really annoying.
It's really annoying.
It's followed by him wheeling his way through that room into another room, and then he hits his arm on the door.
Yeah.
So that's obviously intentional.
Yeah.
The audience has been wound up massively by the string of raspberries.
Yeah.
So, and then he hits his arm. Well, that's what you get.
That's hilarious, that bit. That bit makes me really, really laugh. Because it's just the fact he's just starts sobbing to himself. He's really hurting himself. And he's been such a dick. I just find it really, really comical. Because we've all done it, though. We've all kicked off at some point about something and then went to walk out and just stubbed our toe on the way out. Like, oh, fuck. Made ourselves look a right prick.
That was perfect.
Yeah. You think, you know, you've got the moral right or whatever. Oh, fuck. Couldn't even walk out the door. It's brilliant. I love it. Really makes me laugh.
Well, in true De Niro style, Paul Partain stayed in character as the most annoying, raspberry-blowing dickhead in the world. So he and Marilyn Burns fell out, and Hansen said that he was the only character that he was happy to kill.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a couple of years later that the two met up, and Hansen realised that Partain was in character during filming, and they became the best of friends.
Yeah, lovely.
The one thing about Franklin that's really striking, or the one scene for me, is where they get to the house and he's got what looks like the most disgusting barbecue in the world in his mouth.
Yeah.
It looks like King Kong's finger. It looks disgusting.
What is it?
I don't know. No idea. Why would he say, yeah, that looks good, I'll have that. It looks disgusting, I don't know what it is. And he asks one of them whether they think the hitchhiker will come back, they'll try and follow him. And the camera tracks into his face as he's mulling that potential scenario over. And he kind of does a few little spits, like spits out some food.
Yeah.
What worries me is, what is he spitting out there?
Well, it's the cook, isn't it, from the gas station? That's where he's bought that from. You see the body parts in the fire, so it's obviously like a finger or something. I'll be diplomatic as say. So that, you know, leave it to your own interpretation of what that is, but I do believe it's a body part of some kind.
Upon repeat viewing, that really, really makes an impact.
Yeah, like when he's kind of rolling towards the front of the van as well, he's pushing himself, and it's in his mouth like a cigar. It's just kind of
like a cigar, yeah.
Oh, horrible. Meat cigar.
Oh.
This scene where Leatherface is chasing Sally. The chainsaw itself was a working chainsaw, but it had most of its teeth removed for most of the scenes. And in the sequence where he's chasing her, Hansen slipped and fell to the ground with the chainsaw being flipped up in the air. So it was pitch black, and because he was wearing someone else's face as a mask, he couldn't see anything at all. He just covered his head and hoped for the best, and the saw landed about 2 inches from his face.
Jesus Christ. Do it again.
Really dangerous. Really dangerous. So with Franklin out of the picture and Sally running for her life, it's 4 down, 1 to go.
The crew.
There was a limited crew on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're starting with Tobe Hooper and Kim Henkel, who were the writers. Westy, screenplay for Texas Chainsaw?
I think the screenplay is amazing. I think it does everything it needs to do. I think there was stuff in the screenplay that they couldn't film or realise. I think a lot of the screenplay, if it was read, would be a lot more arty. If you could film everything that's in the screenplay, then films would just be a lot more elaborate. You've kind of got to take about 20-30% off the screenplay, and that's what the film's like. So I think that to still have this much in it and to still be so to the point, I don't feel any of the dialogue is, unbelievable. I don't really feel any of the settings are unnecessary. I think all of the ideas are there, and I think it's probably going to be just as terrifying to read as it is to watch. I think it's really, really good. But I think Kim Henkel, who wrote this with Hooper, I think he's really underappreciated. I think he had a lot to do with this, and his premise was just, I'm going to make something that scares the shit out of people, and we're going to write something that scares the shit out of people. And he directed the return of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, didn't he?
The 4th one.
Yeah, the 4th one. So it's kind
Next
of
generation.
It's a lot of it is his idea. I think you can see that it's ingrained in him, and a lot of this comes down to his experiences as well as Hooper's and what scares him.
Yeah, well, he drew inspiration from Elmer Wayne Henley, who was another serial killer.
Yeah.
He said that he was struck by his reaction when he got caught. He said, I did these crimes and I'm going to stand up and take it like a man. And Henkel said, well, that really struck me as interesting. He had this conventional morality at this point. He wanted it known that now that he was caught, he would do the right thing. So this kind of moral schizophrenia is something that I tried to build into these characters.
Yeah.
Which I think you can see echoed in the likes of Leatherface and in the likes of the cook, who doesn't want to, but really does and really loves it.
Yeah.
But then doesn't like to get his hands dirty and is kind of like escaping from the dinner scene into the living room, but then trying to keep a sneaky look and jumping up and down. So there's that kind of like double side to a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think of the screenplay?
I think it's a screenplay of ideas more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
In a weird way, it takes me back to when we talked about The Shining, and we talked about The Shining screenplay is, if anything, like a framework that Kubrick, as a director, could then just go wild in.
Yeah.
There were things we said in the Shining screenplay, like all the stuff about the layout of the hotel changing and things like that. But the screenplay gave Kubrick the space to do that. And I think this does a very similar thing for Hooper. I think he knows he doesn't need to over-elaborate it. He doesn't particularly feel the need to go into any detail on these characters, their backstories, because it's not needed. What he's done is set up the framework, and then he's just letting himself loose in it as a director, because it's all about the atmosphere. What that screenplay's got to do, it's got to make it seem inevitable where they get to. I think that's the strength of the screenplay, is it just sets those characters on the path, and everything else that Hooper brings into it are these kind of almost abstract ideas of things that are bothering him in society, and he's going to boil it down to this incredibly fucked up family that they run into. So it's a screenplay of ideas, but very disturbing ideas.
It's a super lean screenplay, and there's not much in the way of exposition either.
No.
There's kind of the stuff that the hitchhiker says in the van.
Yeah.
And then basically we're told things by the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that imposes this feeling, this atmosphere on you.
Yeah.
But not much else, and really I'm amazed that you picked up quotes for the start, because there's not much in the way of like iconic dialogue. I think you picked the best two, actually.
It was either that or blowing raspberries for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, one of you might do that.
Or screaming for 10 minutes. I nearly borrowed a pig.
Tobe Hooper said that changes in the cultural and political landscape influenced the tone of the film, and intentionally used the line, "the film you're about to see is true, blah, blah, blah." He said that this was a response to being lied to by the government about things that were going on all over the world, things like Watergate, the atrocities in Vietnam. He used the film as kind of like an allegory for that.
Yeah.
With the building blocks all in place that we've talked about, and drawing inspiration from mavericks of the genre like Romero and Night of the Living Dead, Craven and Last House on the Left, the script for the film was written within weeks. It maintained that title, Head Cheese, until a week before shooting started, when the head of the Texan Film Commission suggested the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I mean, what a title it is. Truly shocking. That's the kind of title that makes me think, I need to watch that film.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But in that case, then, the opening narration that was written by them, was that actually in the screenplay at the start? Because the last words of that narration are the title of the film. So, the film you're about to see is about the head cheese. It wouldn't quite have that written in it, would it? So it's got, that's what...
Head cheese.
Terrifying.
Much like most of the cast and crew, this is Kim Henkel's career peak. You mentioned it, Westy. Mm-hmm. He did write and direct the fourth in the series, Texas Chain Saw Massacre, The Next Generation. Tragedy, that one. Tragedy.
Right.
And he has been involved in other sequels in a producing capacity as well. He's had his name to all of them, basically. Mm-hmm. Move on, finally. The last man on the crew list is Daniel Pearl, who did the cinematography. Matt, what do you think of the look and how Daniel Pearl adds to the feel of the film with his camera?
I think he's the unsung hero of the film, really, because I think so much of this film is grim and vile and horrible that you don't automatically think, oh yeah, cinematography was great though. But there is...
it truly is. Yeah. It's fantastic.
It looks amazing from first frame to the last, and there's some genuinely beautiful images here as well. I love that shot where Kirk and Pam have gone off to find the pool, and the camera's underneath them, looking up at them, and the sun's really high in the sky. That looks amazing. And the other one I really love, it's when Jerry goes to find Kirk and Pam and it's sunset and he's walking off and the sun's really low, and because it's in front of him, he's in silhouette. That's like something from a Terrence Malick film, that.
Yeah.
That's an incredible shot.
Heaven.
It's really, really beautiful. So, yeah, he probably doesn't get enough credit for what he's done here, but then he does balance it with the really grim aspects, like when you've talked about the bone room that Pam falls into. That's like something from just... almost feels like that could be from a snuff film. It looks so realistic. And his choice of close-ups. How close he gets to some of these decorations and ornaments and eyes and things. Yeah. That's what's so unsettling. So, yeah, I think he does some absolutely fantastic work here.
Yeah, I think what's amazing is that it is beautiful, the cinematography is, and it doesn't get the credit it deserves. But the whole feel of the film isn't.
Yeah.
To strike that kind of a balance between the two, I think, is a masterstroke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's what he's shooting as well. I don't think he's given anything beautiful. I think he's got to try and make the horrific look palpable. And that in turn makes it look beautiful because everything else is so horrendous. And then when you see something that's actually quite all right to look at, there's the sun going down. He gives Hooper everything he needs to create these really unsettling things in the edit. I mean, you can imagine how long he's holding on that chicken for, and he's like, well, you get the close-up of that. And they only use snippets of these, but he's got to get them, and every single one of them has got to resonate and make an impact. He's got to focus on the right points.
Yeah.
And I've never seen or never heard of him since or what he'd done, and then I've looked into, do you know what he did after this?
He's done a billion music videos.
Yeah, absolutely loads of music videos. But what he did was revolutionise the music video. I mean, there's so many people who've done it, but there's the look. I mean, if you think of any really big video, like in the 80s or the 90s, like he did Every Breath You Take by the Police, and then which is a really iconic video, and he did Better Days by Springsteen, he did November Rain by Guns N' Roses, he did I'll Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That by Meatloaf. He did Miami by Will Smith. He did Man, I Feel Like a Woman by Shania Twain. All of these.
You saved the best to last there.
But the iconic, that's the point. He creates iconic imagery, and he's got that vibe, and I think he's got this energy that's gone through his whole career. He's fantastic. His work in this especially is really, really inspiring.
Yeah, I really like what feels like the juxtaposition between really up close, really handheld, jerky, in your face immediacy of the action, and then you've got some of the most beautiful shots I've ever seen. I was purring when I was watching this.
Howling and purring.
There's a few, when Jerry goes into the gas station to find out if there's another gas station around and the girls are at the Coke machine. It tracks from left to right and goes past the girls as he goes into the gas station. It just looks fucking brilliant. And there's a shot where it's kind of lurking in the grass when they finally get to the house.
Yeah.
They're getting out of the van. Yeah. And you think that kind of could be somebody lurking, stalking them. Yeah. And it just looks fantastic. So it's the beauty in those shots right next to the horrors captured right in your face. I think it's so disorientating.
It's that final shot of Leatherface with that sun coming up is absolutely fucking amazing. It's just, that's a career high for anybody.
It's how it's captured just before that shot when Leatherface is kind of stabbing away at the camera when Sally's in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And it's just pure menace on his face. I love that shot.
Yeah.
Was this his first film as well?
Yeah, I think he was like 23, just out of college.
That's ridiculous. I mean, it was
Yeah.
stuff new you think you'd get from like a seasoned professional.
Incredible. So a super lean script and an inventive approach to cinematography, not forgetting masterful editing as well and production design off the scale.
Yeah.
All combined to help the Texas Chain Saw Massacre achieve the legendary status it now holds.
Yeah. Everyone at the top of the game when they didn't even know what the game was. Amazing.
Oh, lovely.
Oh.
Yeah, put that on the poster. Sold.
The end.
Into the last sequences of the film, Sally makes it out of the house by jumping through the upstairs window. With Leatherface in hot pursuit, she makes it to the gas station she visited earlier and into the arms of the owner and seemingly relative safety. Westy, gas station.
False sense of security, isn't it? But you
Yeah.
don't trust this guy immediately. I think, like, he plays it so well. It's Jim Sider, isn't it? The actor who
he
plays
does.
him,
He's
and
great.
He's really... he's a nice guy, and at the start of it, when he gets her in, he looks out. He plays
Yeah.
the part. He kind of acts it all out exactly as you want him to, and you kind of take a breath, and you're like, right, well, I don't like him, but at least he's not Leatherface. At the minute, I mean, this is it's still bad apples, but it's not as bad as it was. Like still don't want to be here, but I don't want to be there either. So you do feel at ease a little bit more. It's a bit well lit. There's a fire there. She starts figuring out certain parts, certain elements, and you see that all the meat in the fire, and it starts.
It's when it starts to dawn on her.
And then you see him just turn, not in an obvious way, not in a really sadistic way. He just gets more excited than he does anything else. Yeah, it is. It's horrible. It's so harrowing that it bleeds into the believability of this. Like, he almost can't believe his luck, but you know for a fact he's not strong enough to go through with everything. It's all very kind of happenstance, and then when that goes over her head, and he's hitting her with the broom. That whole serious nature of this scene is really, really unsettling, because you just think, well, it can't really get much worse than this, and then it gets 100 times worse than this. So this really, once you've seen the film, this is that little bit of light relief in the middle where you can kind of catch your breath for about 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah, not
and
long at all.
then it spins you back out, and I love that he goes back in to turn the light off and lock the door, and he's like, got to pay the bills around here. It's just like, you comfortable down there? He's horrible. What a bastard.
Yeah, he said that he was struggling to get into it, and he was.
Yeah.
And she said, just hit me, just do it.
Yeah.
And he said that I got into that frame of mind, and I began to enjoy it.
Oh,
and that poor girl took a real beating.
Jesus.
Awful. Awful. Obviously, we don't condone that. That's
definitely
horrendous
not.
behaviour.
That is horrendous. And the horrible thing is, you can kind of see that on the screen. You can see this excitement within him. He's not playing the part anymore. He's just becoming the part.
Yeah.
It unsettles you immediately, and you just think, oh God, how can this get any worse?
Yeah, well, we'll tell you in a few minutes' time.
Certainly will.
When she's putting up a fight,
Yeah.
and there's one blow that he gives her with the stick, and she stops screaming, and that's a really shocking moment. That's a good punch for the audience, because, oh God, she's given up the fight, and we know how this is going to end. That's truly awful. And the moment when he's in the car, and he's being all nicey-nicey, he says, I hope you're not too uncomfortable down there.
Yeah.
And then he starts jabbing her with a stick. There's something awfully, perversely funny about his face when he's going... Obviously, it's awful, but I do get a wry smile out of it. I'm going to say it. There it is.
We don't condone that either.
Obviously not. It's just that the way he plays it is...
I know what you mean, yeah. Like the look on his face is kind of like there's this glee. And he goes a little bit mental. He just goes a little bit really awful. Sadistic glee that you can't help but, maybe you laugh at it because you're so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It gets to that point where it's not even humour. It's just like, yeah, okay, mate, I'll agree with you. Yeah,
awful. I don't know how to process this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right, Luke, because it's almost farcical by this point how much Sally's gone through. And I think that's what kind of gets that nervous laugh out of you, because, like, geez, what else is she going to have to put up with?
Mm-hmm.
Because you think when she gets the gases, it's like you get a big it's like you just inhale deeply and just calm down for a little bit because Leatherface is gone. But it's only like on repeat viewing, say, I think, well, hang on, why hasn't Leatherface just burst straight in through the door?
Yeah.
Why is he not coming to the gas station? That in itself.
Yeah, because he was right behind her.
Yeah, exactly. That in itself, that's not a good sign.
No.
And then just to get beaten with the broom, I mean, Jesus, like, what else does she have to put up with? Because we mentioned there was like a fairy tale aspect to the beginnings of this film, like what he was inspired by. And that's kind of like a fairy tale thing, isn't it? When Cinderella or someone gets beaten by the broom by the wicked stepmother and things like that.
Yeah,
right.
it's very Hansel and Gretel as well in there.
Very Hansel
like the
and Gretel.
fire there, and they push the witch in the fire, and it's all open, and it's got that vibe to it. It's horrible.
Yeah, and the radio comes back in here as well, doesn't it?
Yes,
Because
it does.
that's when she starts to trigger, oh, hang on, because it's still reports of, like, grave robbing going on. So you think, actually, yeah, she is anywhere safe. And the line that really sticks out to me is when he goes to it, you just cooperate, young lady, and we'll have no trouble. I mean, how big of him?
Yeah, like a policeman.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Sorry being chased by a chainsaw wielding brother or whatever he is to you. So he's a horrible piece of work, but it is funny because it's the juxtaposition of how horrible this scenario is and how, like, inane his comments are. Like when he is talking about the cost of electricity is enough to drive a man out of business.
Yeah.
Who's he saying that to? Does he honestly think she cares about that at that point? Just that nervous laughter just continues as he drives home and he sees the hitchhiker, and I do laugh how he just starts berating him straight away.
Yeah.
Because, that's fair enough, it's the hitchhiker, I don't mind him getting the shit kicked out of him. So that's funny. And then obviously you get, like, my favourite line in the film, which I did at the beginning, where he sees what Leatherface has done at the door. I mean, come on. That's just one of the funniest lines in any film. It's just amazing how, like, fucked off he is at it.
The rest of the house is an absolute shithole.
Yeah, exactly. And he's upset about the door.
But it's absolute carnage because he's everything's in total disarray, and he's beaten Leatherface, he's beaten the hitchhiker, he's worried about the door.
Bad day at the office for that guy.
Terrible. Have you noticed when he's chasing around Leatherface in, like, the kitchen?
Yeah.
Where Pam gets put on the hook. I don't know if that's the kitchen. It might be. I've got no clue.
Yeah.
But there's a wheelchair in the corner. So they've obviously taken Franklin's wheelchair and thought, well, we'll use that later then.
I've never noticed that, no.
Yeah, it's in there.
Well, just got decorated with bones and shit, aren't they?
Yeah. Stick Grander in it, give him a walk.
Yeah. The gas station from the film is still in the same place. It's in a place called Bastrop in Texas, and it's now a bed and breakfast hotel. It's called the Last Chance Gas Station.
Yeah.
And the sign outside still reads, as it does in the film, "We slaughter barbecue."
Amazing.
Wow.
I fancy
Couldn't
it.
avoid that. Drive straight past it.
No, I'm good. I'm fucking good.
Sally is taken back to the house with a hitchhiker in attendance, and all hell breaks loose in a final scene of all final scenes. They sit around the dinner table for a nice family meal, with Sally being served up as the delicious main course.
I thought you was in a hurry.
Matt,
Yeah.
dinner with the Sawyers.
Well, I turned down the invitation. I don't know about you.
I don't think you get the choice to, mate. I think that's the point.
That's true. I mean, Jesus Christ. You can tell by now everyone in this crew, in this cast, is just on the edge. They must be, at this point, just tipping over into proper insanity, because that's the only reason you can have the edge that you do get in this scene. And there's been countless films after this that have tried to do similar. There's so many, like, torture porn films out there.
Awful.
That try to just match this in terms of intensity and in terms of getting under your skin, and none of them come close. And I do think it is because what everyone was going through to get this scene done.
Yeah.
The long days, the heat, the claustrophobia, the stench, it just all comes like pulsating out of the screen. I've never, ever, ever sat through a scene like this and just felt so uncomfortable. But then I just admire it on a technical level so much. The editing is just incredible. The way it cuts, it's absolutely brutal. And then that close-up of Sally's eye.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that freaks me out, it's a close-up of a naked eye.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect example of it. It's absolutely horrendous with her eyes darting around.
Yeah.
Quick cuts snapping away,
Yeah.
and them shrieks in the sound design.
Yeah, because it's so vulnerable as well. Obviously, your eye, especially when it's open, and the camera is so close, you think, well, fucking hell, how close were they to her eye to actually blinding her? And I think that's what gives it that edge. And the noises, I mean, the way that they mix up like animal noises in that soundtrack, just the sound design is crazy. And when they bring Grandpa down, and he starts suckling on a finger. It's the sound. It's like so much of this film, it's the sound of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that part, Matt, is absolutely horrendous. They achieved that by putting tape around an actual knife to dull the blade.
Yeah.
And this, we should say, is in the middle of a 27-hour non-stop filming schedule.
Yeah.
And the reason that it's 27 hours non-stop is because the person who was playing Grandpa, John Duggan, went through 10 hours of makeup. We said, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do everything from this point onwards with my face in.
Yeah.
So that's why it's 27 hours. So everybody was fraught with tension, lack of sleep, horrendous conditions.
Yeah.
And they were trying this scene, and they had a tube with stage blood, and they were squeezing it, and it just wouldn't work. It got clogged up. Gunnar Hansen took the tape from the edge of the knife and sliced Marilyn Burns' fingers. And that's actually the scene that we see. That's real blood, which makes such an impact when you look at it. Hansen said, at this point, I was so crazy, I just wanted to get the film over with.
Yeah.
And Burns didn't actually realise that this had happened because she was in such a state. And neither did John Duggan, who plays Grandpa. Duggan said, I didn't find out till years later that I was actually sucking on her blood, which is kind of erotic, really.
Is it?
No,
that's not what I would call erotic at all.
Outrageous that, isn't it? I mean, being a fly on the wall on that set when all of this carnage is happening.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't be able to unsee it, just like the film had been a million times worse.
Yeah, disgusting.
That's what it is on screen. It's genuine insanity. It's genuine people over the edge, and just the endless shrieking they do at each other, and how the shrieking gets the cook giggling. Like he's trying to he's almost trying to keep it sane, but he just can't help himself, and he goes over the edge. And oh my word, there's just nothing else like it.
Nothing else like it at all. Westy, what's your take on this?
This is what I would imagine hell is like. This is just absolutely fucking atrocious. It's disgusting to the point where if I didn't love the film so much, I would say that it's beyond reproach. It's fucking
It's
hideous.
so difficult to watch.
It's horrible.
It's so oppressive.
Yeah.
Everything that's happening, the noises, the taunts, the kind of like when the hitchhiker's feigning that he's crying.
Yeah.
When Sally's screaming, Jesus.
It's just the thing that strikes me is the formality of it. There's nothing worse than if you're in a formal setting that you don't want to be in. Like if you go to a dinner party or if you go to someone's house and you're just kind of getting to know them and you're sitting around the table and you've got that formality to it and you're stuck there. You know you're stuck there because that's that situation. Like you can't just. It's nothing breezy about it. There's nothing. Everything's got to be done and you've got to get through that dinner. Like if you sat down, you sat down. You can't just excuse yourself and fuck off. You know that's where you are, and that for me, that's what freaks me out is that she is stuck there and so are you, and this whole sequence that like you both touched on. I mean, the set design in this is just incredible.
It's out of control, isn't it? It's
amazing.
So
level of detail.
Amazing attention to detail.
You could put the camera anywhere and you would be shocked by what you saw. You know, and the fact that when you realise that Grandad's alive, you know, it's played by John Duggan, who was 20 years old at the time, by the way. And they glued that onto his fucking face 27 hours, and he's got like scars and stuff on his face because of the glue that it was stuck for that long. And you just, there's the bit where they put her over the tub and he's trying to hit her with a hammer, and you just go,
that's awful.
It makes us feel at once terrified, so furious, and sick to my stomach at the same time when he keeps dropping that hammer. It's like right, I've had enough now. Like I want to go in there and just start swinging at them and just be like, you're taking the piss, like this is too far. And it just it really fucking riled me up, but it's so well done to create those emotions and those feelings. Like I don't just feel like it's difficult to watch. It's almost impossible to watch.
It's unbearable.
Oh, you know, I get a bit pissed off with them. I don't. I get furious with them. You can smell this atmosphere. You are in that environment. The camera placement puts you at that table with them staring at you. Every single minute of it is so repellent, but it needs to be because when she gets away, then you get away almost.
I think the most truly terrifying thing about it is it's been built up all the way through the film.
Yeah.
It's clear there is absolutely no reasoning with this family.
Yeah, nothing.
There's no way you can get out. There's nothing you can say that you will be able to talk your way out of it, or somebody's going to come to your rescue. She's done for.
Yeah.
The only thing that she can do is jump out of the window.
Yeah, this is their normality, though. That's the point. You've got no argument, because whatever you say, they just will not understand it.
Yeah, they're not going to say, "Oh, well, let you off."
This is like a Wednesday night or something. Do you know what I mean? They're having a fucking great time on a Wednesday because there's some fresh meat to eat. And it's like, get back in there on the stove, get Granda down, you fuck the door up, and it's just this. It's so disgusting, and you're just
horrendous.
Thrown in the middle of it. It's amazing, but it's not. If you know what I mean.
When Sally makes it out of there and Leatherface is chasing after her, that's a really iconic image. But it's the way the hitchhiker is slashing at her.
Yeah.
As he makes it onto the road and the truck wiping him out is the most satisfying death I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, superb.
Yeah.
Oh, God. What do you think of that guy who's in the Black Maria truck who throws the wrench off his face?
He's how I would have reacted at the start of the film. I would have thrown a wrench at the first person I saw and just ran away.
Because he doesn't go back to his truck. He doesn't get into the back of the pickup.
Yeah.
He just keeps
fucking legs it.
But you would. Can you imagine being you're in your truck and you're just driving down your street and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden you're faced with this absolute carnage madness, and there's a guy with a face and a chainsaw. What on earth must that guy be thinking?
Yeah.
Here, it's like you are the truck driver, and it's like you've just wandered into this scene of utter carnage. And you're like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
And it just balances so perfectly, because on one hand, there's some proper slapstick in here. Just the way that driver runs is funny. He's got a real comical run. And yeah, exactly. He's a guy who doesn't do running on a normal basis, you can tell that. And then just throwing that wrench and just hitting it square off the Leatherface's forehead. That's hilarious. Dropping the chainsaw on his own legs. Again, you're just laughing nervously, but it is funny.
I love when he injures himself. I love the fact that the only violence that you see in this film is when the bad guys either get injured or killed.
Yeah.
Because that violence, when he gets hit by that truck, you see everything. You see it doesn't cut. It's not subliminal at all. When that chainsaw hits Leatherface's leg, you see the incision. You see
and there's
everything.
Obviously a prosthetic in there which you had to squeeze to get the blood to come out, because he squeezes the leg.
Yeah.
Some of the images, all the way through the film, but some of the images in the last 5 minutes are scorched in my brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll never get rid of them.
Absolutely. No. I love this final sequence. I love the fact that they didn't quite know what to do with Leatherface when they were getting away, and Tobe Hooper was like, just do something with the chainsaw. He just came up with all that, swinging it. The cameraman didn't know what was happening. It's a real chainsaw getting swung. It gets really close to him. It's really erratic. The sun's coming up behind him. There's that sound. It's just this horrible nightmare, and then it's just bang, black.
Reception and awards.
We mentioned it before, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a huge roaring success. On a final budget of between $80,000 and $140,000, in total it returned $30 million in the box office. One of the most profitable films ever. In today's money, that would be $158 million. I mean, I can't see a film like this being that successful now.
No, not from the budget that it was made on, and not because this subject matter now.
This subject matter, no way.
Not. So that's millions of pounds in the mob pocket. Really heartbreaking.
There was some backlash to the film, though. There were reports of mass walkouts at some cinemas, and 2 theatres in Ottawa were threatened with morality charges if they didn't withdraw the film.
Well, I mean, I can see why.
Yeah, I can understand, and especially in the mid-70s.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what Hooper was hoping for, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. Hooper's hoping for that.
Yeah.
Tobe Hooper.
There were release issues outside of the US. It was pretty much permanently banned in the UK like we talked about, until 1999. And the main problem was that the film contained the word chainsaw.
The main problem, not massacre.
That was... no.
Fucking hell. Could be called like the Texas Chainsaw Fairy Tale. Yeah. Chainsaw, that's the problem.
It was banned in other countries like Finland, Germany, Brazil, Chile, France, Ireland, to name but a few. That didn't stop it becoming part of the Museum of Modern Art in 1981, which is unusual for a film.
Yeah.
At the time, reviews were a mixed bag. The Cincinnati Enquirer said, Marilyn Burns as Sally deserves a special Academy Award for one of the most sustained and believable acting achievements in movie history. No, I don't believe that.
If you take the word acting out of it, I agree.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert, he said it was as violent and gruesome and blood-soaked as the title promises. No, it wasn't.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
And Harper's Magazine, they said the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a vile little piece of sick crap.
Not a fan.
Not a fan at all. Despite the negatives, the film now has a 89% Rotten Tomatoes rating and a score of 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb. Doing alright for a film with a cast and crew of nobodies, a shoestring budget, and some of the worst filming conditions in history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sequels and influence.
The impact of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre runs deep and wide. It had a huge influence on shaping the genre in the years and decades to come, leaving a blueprint for what was to be known as the slasher subgenre in its wake. Ridley Scott called it one of the few really, really great movies, and Wes Craven said it was in his top 5 films of all time.
Oh, lovely. Craven raving about it.
That makes sense.
Messing with the big boys.
Lovely.
With so much success and acclaim, a sequel was inevitable, but audiences had to wait a full 12 years, and overall there have been an additional 7 Texas Chainsaw films.
Wow.
Count them up. 7.
Really?
7 too many.
It's a lot to ignore, isn't it?
Everyone's a winner.
But you've managed it.
I have, yeah.
First off, we had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 in 1986. That was directed again by Tobe Hooper and starred Dennis Hopper. Very strange.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah. Then in 1990, that saw the release of Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, starring Viggo Mortensen.
Right.
In 1995, we've got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, starring Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. That one was written and directed by Kim Henkel as well.
Really good casts, these, though. If you read these to me and be like, oh, check out the remakes, or check out the sequels. We've got Dennis Hopper in there, we've got McConaughey, we've got Viggo Mortensen. I'll be like, I'm involved. Yeah, let's check it out.
Didn't know Mortensen was in one of them.
Yeah, well, this was Hopper off the boil, and also Mortensen, Zellweger, and McConaughey before they were famous. Right. They would do any old shit.
Fair enough.
And they did. Then a remake came in 2003 which tried to recreate the feel of the original by recruiting many of its cast and crew. It failed.
It did.
Then a prequel to the remake in 2006. That was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Going back to the original series but retconning the timeline all over the place, Texas Chainsaw 3D came out in 2013. And finally we got Leatherface 2017. Surely not the last entry in the canon, I'm guessing, but one of the worst.
Yeah. These slowly started losing any kind of energy towards the end of that. You're just like, I can't. Is there another one? Oh, for fuck's sake, I've got to read this out.
Have you seen any of those then, fellas?
I've seen the 2003 remake. Can't remember anything about it, and I don't really feel the need to rectify that.
Yeah, same. I've seen that one. I know Daniel Pearl came back and shot that one, so I was intrigued to watch it again because I saw it when it came out and I wasn't impressed then, and I thought, well, I've just seen Texas Chainsaw for this, so I'll give that one a go because it seemed like the most honest kind of reimagining of it, or the revisiting to it with, you know, the similar people in it and casting, and it's just it misses on every single level.
I've seen part 2, and not the part 2 to the remake, part 2 with Dennis Hopper, and it's so disappointing. The tone's like slapstick comedy mixed with gross outgo.
I've seen that one as well, and I saw that the poster was mimicked off The Breakfast Club. I was like,
that's right, yeah, it's probably the best thing about it.
It is the best thing about it. That's why I watched it, and I thought, well, I'm so disappointed.
Is that the one that's playing on the telly in the Burbs, and Tom Hanks is watching it?
Yeah. When the chainsaw comes
is
through
that
the
the
wall
one?
and kind of cuts in half.
Because he has the nightmare about it, yeah. Oh, that's just part 2, is it, right? That's
Ridiculous.
the most I've seen of it, and I don't think I'll need to see any more.
Yeah, it's one. I think it's one of the worst films I've seen.
Right.
Yeah,
like,
it's
really
a canon
bad.
film as well, isn't it?
It is a canon film,
so
The budget's amped up.
Yeah, a lot of issues in there.
Yeah, my lords. It's probably best to avoid all the sequels and remakes, considering our comments there. None of them have got a good reputation, but if you can't resist, you could try part 2 and you could try the remake, but the rest, just give them a wide berth. Waste of time. Next Generation's got the lowest box office receipts, taking just $185,000. Very disappointing.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
Very disappointing. Texas Chainsaw, the beginning, that has the lowest rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 13%. So it's the worst of a bad bunch, though all of the sequels are below 50%. So it's in good company, or bad company.
Yeah, well, it's a big avoid from us, but up to you.
Mm-hmm. Big avoid, 7 avoids. As is generally the case, the original is the best, but unlike most horror franchises, the various sequels and remakes haven't sullied the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's visceral power.
All the right movies ranking.
Now we're going to settle down for the final course of the show. Matt, could you serve us up your summary and score for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, please?
I don't think there's any other film I've done such a 180 on with this one. I said at the top of this episode, I was underwhelmed on first viewing, but in retrospect, that's because I was young, I was naive, I was stupid, I was shallow. I wanted blood and guts like flung across the screen. I wanted to see chainsaws going into people's heads, and obviously that's not what this film is. But obviously, as I've grown and I've matured a little bit, not massively, but a little bit.
I was going to say, I was this and I was that.
Now I'm just old and stupid and shallow, etc. But now I appreciate it for what it is, which is just a film that stands alone in its genre, and countless imitators have followed, sequels or not, but not one of them has got the intensity of this because of the way this was shot, the way that it was just full-on, no holds barred, full-on determination by Hooper.
Yeah,
I would never say this is one of me all-time favourites, and I've watched it about 3 times in the last week or so in preparation for this, and I think I'm good with it for a while. It'll probably be a good while before I put it on again, but I'm just in awe of it when I think how young they all were, how inexperienced they were, the conditions they made this in, and they didn't kill anyone. So, and when I think about these sequels, they just don't have the creativity and the artistry that went into this, which we've discussed. There's incredible work here in the cinematography, in the sound design, in the editing. And when I just think about what they've come out with and the way that it puts you, the viewer, through it, this can't be anything other than a 10 for me.
Wow.
Boom. Love
Yep,
it.
Ooh,
it really is.
That's a big one.
Love it.
And Westy?
I'm going to just mirror what I've said all the way through. I know that we get to these summaries and I always feel like I'm just repeating what I've said for like the last hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever, and that it is a piece of work that I admire immensely. It divides people. You love it or you hate it because it's a work of conviction. It's a work of confidence. It's just a work of pure energy and opinion from one guy who had a vision, who got together with another guy who wrote a screenplay, who got a crew together who understood what he was going to do, and then got actors together who put themselves through absolute hell to make it work. And every single person really suffered to make this work and really suffered to make this exist in this world, and it should exist because it's still relevant now. It's a heightened version, like I've said. It's repellent in places, it's disgusting in places, it makes you feel absolutely worthless at times, horrible, sickened, disgusted, but you walk away from it thinking, hold on a second, it's not that bad out there. Maybe it's going to be all right. Maybe this version of what I've seen has made us feel that way. I don't ever want to feel that way again. So you live your life a little bit better. It kind of makes you a better person. So whether you walk away sickened or you walk away enlightened, either way, it exists for that reason. So it cannot be denied its place in the history of horror, and it cannot be denied its place in the history of cinema for what it is. It is a masterpiece. Whether you love it or you hate it, you can't deny that this is a masterpiece of cinema, and it's a 10.
Jesus Christ. Blown my hair right back with that one. Boom. Both of you two.
Not expecting that.
Finding beauty in the darkness there,
Yeah.
Westy. Very nice.
I always do. I've got no choice.
Wow. It's a film for me that I've always been aware of since in my younger years, and I've always been a little apprehensive of, even after watching it. thinking it's a challenge to watch this, and it's an ordeal. If I'm going to put it on, I have to be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
The uncompromising subject matter doesn't necessarily encourage repeat viewings, but its power to shock and strike fear hasn't dulled at all, even on the numerous rewatches that I've given it over the past few weeks. Technically, I really don't think it does any missteps whatsoever. It's perfect. It's just the fact that whether you buy into this subject matter or not.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where people either love it or hate it. I think the performances are better than most in this genre, but it's never been in my favourite horrors. And that is still the case. It's not in there with, say, The Exorcist.
Right, really?
It's not far off, though.
Right.
So I'm looking at it from a comparative point of view, and I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10.
All right. Fine. It's not a problem. No worries. I'll have a word with you later about it. It's not.
There is no definition of how we score things, Westy. It's personal preference.
Of course it is,
Okay.
and it's fine. I'm fine with it.
Is it fine?
Oh yeah, absolutely fine with it.
Lovely bombshell at the end there.
I've given something a 9 out of 10,
These
and I'm getting berated for it.
I'm not berating you, mate. I'm just saying that's fine.
I honestly thought my score would be the highest out of all three.
Really?
I'm amazed that you've both given it a 10.
Yeah.
On Twitter, our followers have been voting on the Texas Chain Saw Massacre as well, and we've got a few comments before we give you the score.
All right.
Pal at Dyslexic Turtle 3 said 7 or lower when compared to the original Halloween or Friday the 13th.
Okay.
Not for me, but okay.
Yeah, not for me
No.
either. Not.
No, Halloween, fair enough.
Not
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
It's a different beast, though.
No.
Really.
It is. Christopher Bratton at Chris D. Bratton said, one of the best horror films, and I'm using the word horror in its literal meaning. Mm-hmm. Just the right amount of weirdness and artistry to really get under your skin and stay there.
Agree.
Yeah.
That's more like it.
Yeah.
That's more like
Yeah,
it.
that's it, Chris.
More of that.
There you go,
more
Chris.
Of that, Chris.
Darren Hines at Hines D24 said 12 out of 10.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go. That makes up for your score, Luke.
Very optimistic. There you go. Between us, we have 21 out of 10. And with all the votes in combined from Twitter, Texas Chainsaw got a score of...
I hate to say it, but I think it's going to be like an 8.
Yes, it's very divisive.
8 out of 10.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
That's fair enough. I can understand why.
Yeah, there's the amount of people I speak to when I say, like, this is one of my favourite films, and they go, oh, you're just fucking weird. Oh, is it? Oh, I don't want to speak to you anymore. You know what I mean? So, I'm quite happy. I'd rather have this as a friend than them people. I'll be perfectly honest with you. At least I know it's fucking motives.
Guaranteed a good meal.
Exactly.
That means with all of our votes and the votes from Twitter combined, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre has an overall score of 37 out of 40. Go to alltherightmovies.com/leaderboard to check out the score of all the other films that we've covered and see how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre shapes up. As ever, you can sign up to us on Patreon. That is www.patreon.com/alltherightmovies. Get on there for loads of great exclusive movie content produced by us here at All The Right Movies.
Yes, please do.
And a shout out to the great guys in our Director's Chair tier of patrons. They are Adam Cowie, Adam Yates, Damien Lennox, Anna Randall, Andrea Barker Said, Matt Lum, Graham Chater, Just Joe, Sheriff Ahmed, Kenny Morrison, Gary West, Jamie Russell, Robert Shearer, Mike Riley, George Anderson, and Paul Devine.
Yeah.
Lovely.
A great gang of guys.
Lovely gang of
guys.
Sawyers.
We'll serve you some head cheese later.
You love it.
We can't promise that.
And fix your front door as well.
Creeping me out, man. Next to your front door. Jesus.
Well, that is a wrap. We're going to go to the neighbour's house for some gas. For all show notes, credits and references that we use in the production of the podcast, you can visit alltherightmovies.com/the-texas-chain-saw-massacre. Join us again on All The Right Movies when John, Matt and P.I. are taking down LA when they discuss Michael Mann's Heat.
Lovely.
Should be a good one.
He's got a great ass.
Yeah. Great impressions and not so great haircuts.
Yeah, fantastic. As always, if you could subscribe, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, we'd be very, very happy. You probably know, but we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts and everywhere else. The content is building thick and fast here as loads of really great features go up regularly on our website as well. That's www.alltherightmovies.com. Go there for your fix. And we've just set up a Facebook page as well, so search All The Right Movies on there, join the group and join in on the great movie discussion.
Yeah, and we're all on there as well, so it's
Exactly.
getting us through that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. As always, on Twitter we are at right_movies. Instagram we are at all_right_movies. And again, the website, alltherightmovies.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be back in 2 weeks.
Stay safe.
Cut the black.